Welcome to the Survivor to Thriver show with your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Do you feel stuck, silent, and stressed? Is something hurting your heart and soul? Are you burning yourself out? If so, you are in the right place because this is the podcast people from all over the world join in to learn exactly how to stop suffering and start living with inner peace and joy. Let's get started. Hey, last episode we were talking about the times in our lives when we find ourselves judging and blaming ourselves or even others, but really I want to focus right now on when we do it to ourselves. And we are blaming and judging ourselves in ways that are really unwarranted, and I would say even unnecessary and possibly even unjustified. Not in any absolute sense, of course, because every perspective has some validity to it. If you're blaming and judging yourself, there is a reason why you're doing so. Right? But the problem with these perspectives is that they're often very narrow. They're a very narrow view of the situation, the context, the conditions within which you had to make the decisions that you did, within which you took the actions that you did. And these perspectives are generally missing the necessary empathy and compassion. And insofar as they're missing the necessary empathy and compassion, they are not good, right? They're not good. They cannot lead to consequences of inner peace and happiness and joy in our lives. Because we cannot really achieve or sustain inner peace, happiness, and joy in our lives divorced from empathy and compassion towards ourselves and others. And as I was thinking about this phenomenon that we all experience, it reminded me of Marshall Rosenberg's idea about mistakes. Now, I may end up paraphrasing a little bit, but basically he says something to the effect of mistakes, the very idea of mistakes is sort of a mistake. In the sense that he says a mistake is simply something that I would not have done if I had known then what I know now. A mistake is simply an action or a behavior that I'm regretting now, but I wouldn't have done it if I knew then what I know now. And as I was reading this, I was like, actually that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. It's like, why would I do something that I know is wrong, that I know I will regret later? Why would I do it? Like in general, I don't, we think of mistakes as a very negative thing, as a very bad thing. So we don't want to make mistakes. We don't make mistakes, like we don't take action that we believe are mistakes. You see? And so what's really happening in these situations is that we're making the very best decisions that we can with what we know and what we have. It's just that sometimes we find ourselves facing very difficult circumstances, very difficult choices. You know, that idea of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. And when we find ourselves stuck between a rock and a hard place, it's like, okay, well, if those are the only two ways that I can see for moving ahead, then I have to choose one. And I know neither one is good, but I have to choose the best of the worst, right? I have to choose the best that I can from the options that I have. And if both the options that I have are bad, they're very difficult choices, they're not things that they're not options, they're not choices that I would have set up for myself if I had control over the situation. You know, in this kind of a scenario, whether you choose the rock or the hard place, to some extent it's very natural that, you know, you feel a sense of regret for having made the choice that you did, right? Because in the aftermath of having made the choice, you may be experiencing a lot of difficulty, a lot of challenges. And, you know, it's like, you don't want to be facing those challenges. You don't want to be having to deal with those hurdles and those problems. So it's very natural for us to feel a sense of like, and you may even find yourself second guessing yourself, wondering, you know, what if I had chosen the hard place instead? Maybe you think to yourself, maybe if I'd chosen the hard place instead, things would have been better. But really, how do you know? How do you know that? Maybe, possibly, but insofar as at that point in time, you determined that choosing the rock was the better option, it's like, what makes you even believe right now that having chosen the hard place, you would be better off right now? See, again, it's like you made the very best choice you could at that time. You chose the rock for a reason. You chose the rock because you thought it was the better option between the rock and the hard place. Why would you deliberately make a choice? Why would you choose the rock if you didn't believe that it was the better option? So now when you are blaming yourself and judging yourself or second guessing yourself and engaging in all of these what ifs and should have, could have, what's the point of that? How is that form of thinking helpful? It's not. It's only keeping you stuck in a very negative energy and preventing you from seeing the gifts that may be present in the moment. It's preventing you from being able to perhaps even focus on moving forward in more positive ways, applying better solutions, identifying better solutions for yourself moving forward, right? So this is just a very, very bad place to be. This kind of blaming and judging. It does not help. But it's something that we oftentimes find ourselves struggling with. You know, there's so much misinformation out there in the world about what it really takes for us to create positive change, whether it's in ourselves or if you want to inspire change in someone else. There's just so much misinformation that we're thinking that it's like, you're blaming and judging yourself. And sometimes, you may be thinking that it'll help motivate you to do better in the future, or something along those lines, right? It's like when parents, for example, reprimand or scold their children. It's oftentimes with the idea that you're teaching your children very important lessons so that they improve for the future. But a lot of times it does when you reprimand them, and basically it's a form of laying blame and judgment on them, a lot of times we find that it actually backfires. It actually does not help, right? It actually can make the situation worse. So what is the best way to make progress? Let me share with you something that I learned on this issue from reading a book called Putting the 1 Minute Manager to Work. Now, this particular book is just one in a series of books, the 1 Minute Manager series, right? So this one's Putting the 1 Minute Manager to Work. And basically, now this set of books was written as a guide to help managers in businesses manage their people more effectively. But you know that the basic principles of effective communication and how to create and maintain healthy relationships remain the same. Whether you are applying them in the context of professional relationships, or whether you're applying them in the context of personal relationships, or even in the context of how you relate to yourself. The basic principles of effective communication and healthy relationship building, they are the same. So in the 1 Minute Manager book, they talk about this idea of reprimands and praisings, right? Reprimands meaning like when somebody does something that you believe is not good, then it's like, okay, well, you want them to stop the negative behavior, then you need to give them a negative consequence. If you want someone to stop doing something, stop or change a negative behavior, then you need to give them a negative response. But if you want people to keep doing something, or you want people to improve on their performance, or you want them to learn something new, then you have to give them a positive consequence, like a praising, to enable them to continue the behavior or improve on the behavior. Okay? So this is like really, really, really key. Now, in the book they talk about how, look, if you reprimand someone who is a learner, like meaning you're trying to learn something new, you are doing the best you can with what you know, what you have, and you make a mistake, and you get reprimanded for having made that quote-unquote mistake. What it can actually immobilize you. It can make you more insecure, and it can actually hinder your ability to improve your performance and learn and grow. Reprimanding someone cannot teach them skills, right? And in the context of our relationship with ourselves, this is also true. If we are doing something that we don't like, if you're engaging in behaviors or ways of thinking that we don't like about ourselves. See, and we criticize ourselves, we blame ourselves, we judge ourselves. See, blame and judgment and criticism, these things, they cannot teach skills. They cannot teach skills, right? And if my issue is, if the reason I'm engaging in the behaviors that I'm engaging in, the reason for that is that I really, that's just the best I know, that's the best I can do, then all that blame, judgment, shame, guilt, it's not going to help me change, right? Because it cannot teach me to do better. It can't teach me to do something different. So the 1 Minute Manager recommends that, look, what you really want to do is, if someone's doing the best they can do, if you are doing the best you can do, and you still make a mistake, or your performance is not up to par, then instead of reprimanding, judging, blaming, focus on learning the skills that you need to improve your performance. Focus on maybe what you really need to do is, like, maybe if you're failing to accomplish a specific goal that you have set for yourself, maybe you need to reset your goal, make it a little bit more realistic, right? Maybe the problem isn't that you're stupid or something. The reason you cannot achieve your goal is not that there's something wrong with you. The problem is, the reason why you're not able to achieve the goal is that it was a goal that was inappropriately set. It was a goal that was too challenging for your current level of abilities, right? Your current set of potential and capability. Maybe it was just an unrealistic goal, so maybe you need to reset it. And to encourage someone to reset the goals or to learn the new skills that they need to, so that they can continue to learn and grow, the more effective thing to do is to praise them, to give them encouragement. So it's like, okay, all right, okay. So focus. So this is where, what I was talking about in terms of why it's important to have empathy and compassion. It's like, if you come from a perspective of empathy and compassion, then you can correctly assess and distinguish between, why did you really do what you did? Like, was it an issue of, look, I just didn't know any better, and now I've learned I've learned my lesson, so in the future I will do better? Or is it that, you really knew what you were doing and you still did it anyway? Like, you actually have an attitudinal problem, like I was saying. Like, sometimes, we're just thoughtless in the ways that we act, and that's the problem, right? But it's like, if you did something because you were thoughtless, and now you've realized your mistake in that. Well, yeah. In that context, it makes a lot of sense that if you feel bad about what you have done, but even then, rather than blaming and judging and all that kind of stuff, what if, okay, you accept what you have done, you accept how you're feeling, and then you refocus your attention on taking corrective action. So that really is ultimately the key. Now let's I'm going to go ahead and wrap up right here for today. And remember, if this is something that you find yourself struggling with, please don't continue to struggle with it on your own. Reach out for help and support, and you know that I'm one person you can reach out to. Just go to my website at www.academyofthriving.com, click on the Contact Us page, and you'll see how you can connect with me. So until we connect next time, I wish you lots of peace and joy.